Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest, at least. And today's guest is the commissioner of Cozy and the author behind Untethered and Lad the Homecoming, the comic. It's just you and me now, sport. Umar Ditta is here. Welcome, pal.
Hi, George. Hi, everyone.
We're thrilled to have you here, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where your love of horror comes from?
My love of horror comes from, well, as a kid, I was scared of everything. When it came to the films, I'll paint you a picture. The scene that scared me the most as a kid was that scene in Terminator 2 when he was cutting his arm. I was like, oh, this is the most scariest thing I've ever seen. He's cutting his arm. It's gross. And then for like a couple of years, I was like, whenever a horror thing came, I was like, no, I don't want any part of it. And then I guess it was something similar to Kevin McAllister in Home Alone when he went down to the basement. I was like, no, time to face my fears. And I think the first film that sort of, well, I guess it kind of launched my love into horror, but I really picked a really tough film. The first one was A Clockwork Orange.
Oh my God.
And I was only about 12. Okay, so how I stumbled across that is over in the UK, well, especially the sort of channels we had. I only had 5 channels growing up, and Channel 4, which obviously got BBC, ITV, which is sort of the mainstay. Channel 4 was a sort of outsider channel, and they were advertising, and I don't know how I came across it, where they were saying Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange band back on, and they're doing it in a really artistic way, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I don't know anything about this. Internet wasn't really prominent around then, so I was like,
right.
I snuck down past bedtime and I put my VCR in, recorded it, just left it recording, and then the next day I was like, what is this? It's got band, it must be scary. And I was like, oh my God, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
It is really, as a 12-year-old, yeah, it makes you be like, well, you could either go one or two ways. You can either go, I'm running away, that's enough, no more. But then I was like, that was traumatizing, but I guess I'm in now.
Right. At that point, you're like, well, it can't get much worse than this.
yeah. I set the bar very high in terms of horror.
It's interesting, too, because A Clockwork Orange was technically not a video nasty, which I expected to be the case. It was just, like, randomly pulled in the UK.
Yeah, by Kubrick himself, I think.
That's right. Now, I'm curious as well. I mentioned up top, you're the commissioner of Cozy, I called you. You're a big part of the Gorley and Rust community. And I'm curious what you feel is the coziest horror movie.
Oh, I did not plan for this. See, I'm a fan of this show, and I really, like, when I looked at your previous guests, Mike Hanford, Betsy Sodoro, I'm like, oh, this is some class A people you got here. And so firstly, before I even go to that, George, I want to say, this is a brilliant show you got here. I know I'm vamping. It sounds like I'm vamping, and I might be vamping, but no, this is a really great show, and I love these sort of questions that you chuck at your guests.
Oh, well, thank you.
Coziest horror for me, okay, I got it, The Thing.
That's a good one.
Yes, because there's horrifying space monsters and Rob Bottin's creatures are all over running rampant, but you get the nice, cute husky for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, look, like McCready playing chess.
He's drinking a nice scotch there. You know, everyone's trapped inside. You have to stay all huddled up, wear heavy clothing.
Yeah. And
I get it.
It's also like when the sort of friendship, well, I can call it friendship, between Keith David and Kurt Russell, that sort of grows in a really bad situation. I'm like, hey, if you can make friends in the middle of The Thing, you can make friends anywhere.
That's right. That's right. It's really about learning to trust again.
Within reason, yes. Trust as much as you're willing to trust, yes.
You've written several comics at this point, with the 3rd installment of Lad the Homecoming coming soon. Are there any horror comics that you enjoy, and is there any desire to move that way for yourself in the future?
Well, when it comes to horror comics, some really good ones, I can never remember the full title of it, but it's done by Ram V, who is a good mate of mine, but I think it's for Vault Comics, and I think it's These Savage Shores, and it's based around colonial time in India, but with vampires and mythical creatures, and it's that gothic horror, but in an area that I'd never seen before. So that's one that's really stuck in my craw, and it's such a beautiful book. So that is a really, really phenomenal horror comic that I thought of recently. And also, the thing about Lad is it does have the sort of crime family and the sort of thriller aspect to it.
Right.
But there's so much horror that I've tried to put into it, and so much sort of just creepy and unease. Because like a big influence on that book is Blue Ruin, the thriller. That is a sort of like, I saw that and I thought, oh, there's an influence within there. But another big one is, have you heard of Dead Man's Shoes?
I don't know that one, no.
Okay, so have you heard of the film This Is England? I think it's This Is England.
No, I don't know that one
so
either.
It's Sean Meadows, director not too far from here. Like, I'm based in Lancashire. He's a Yorkshire lad, so but from a US geography, it's probably just down the road. But it's like UK is so tiny, it's like, oh, they're miles away, you know. But but what's called Dead Man's Shoes? It stars Paddy Considine, who was in, viewers probably familiar with him in Hot Fuzz as one of the arsehole coppers, the one with the mustache one. So he's and Dead Man's Shoes is a really good sort of thriller horror sort of film. Like it was a toss up between the film that I selected today and that to be my favourite horror movie.
Wow.
But I won't go too much into the film, but it's based in the UK, you know, not too far from where I'm based, so that's the way that sort of got my familiarity with the film. But it's also really, really, really good. And it's just basically like a horror thriller revenge movie with a tiny, tiny budget, and I think it's about 20 years old now. I really recommend it to people, but that's not the film I'm talking about today. But I mean, you know, but please check that one out.
Absolutely, and who knows? Maybe one day we'll do a spotlight on that instead, and we'll get you back on here.
Please, yes, definitely.
But as you say, that's not the movie we're here to talk about today. Today's movie is Manhunter from 1986. Oh, yes. A true blue classic, emphasis on the blue. And this is the third movie from Michael Mann, having broken out with Thief, another movie that I enjoy very much. And then he had a bad experience with the studio chopping up The Keep, so there was a lot of pressure on him to deliver a good follow-up. And Manhunter is an adaptation of Thomas Harris's book Red Dragon, which was itself released in 1981, and the first in what would become a quadrilogy of books related to Hannibal the Cannibal. Now, the rights to this book were owned by Dino De Laurentiis, and there was actually some discussion of having David Lynch direct it, which, good lord, I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
I can see it, but at the same time, I can't, which is exactly what David Lynch is, I guess. It's just out of grasp what the David Lynch Manhunter would look like.
If we all knew what it would look like, he wouldn't be as unique and interesting a director as he is.
Yes, absolutely.
And he was still under contract with Dino after Dune, but David was, he said that he was appalled by the type of violence in this and not eager to undertake the movie. So Dino brought in Mann. I saw some reports that it was sort of a fit of spite, and he was just like, his name is like the title. So take that, David.
Wait, didn't David Lynch do Blue Velvet in the same year? Which is that film. Okay, there's not out-and-out violence, but what's his name? What's the name of Hopper's character? Frank?
Yeah, Frank Booth.
He's not nice, David. Come on, come on, David.
We see an ear chopped off.
Yeah.
It's already chopped off when we see it, but it's still gross.
Very gross. And he's a very gross person in other ways as well.
Baby wants to fuck. Famously.
Oh, yeah. Just a little side note. On Blue Velvet, I read somewhere that, well, already going off on a tangent, which I think is very suitable for the podcast that we're a fan of, which in Goalie and Rush just it's full of tangents with a little bit of talking horror movie. But in Blue Velvet, I read somewhere that Dennis Hopper, he was going to make some sort of like a drug, was because that's a drug that he takes and never been explained. And David Lynch, being not very of that world but interested in that world, he was like, oh, if you take the gas, it'll make your voice go high. And then Dennis Hopper was like, no, it won't. Like, I've taken gases, and so then like he had so much input on the way that Frank took the drug and how he reacted, and it shows in that film because Frank is terrifying. He
really is. It's a great role and a great movie, and frankly, I'm not surprised that it was picked for this very show. And you can hear all about Blue Velvet with my buddy Joe, and that's a fun one. So, yeah, Blue Velvet rules though, and Frank Booth is a very, very scary man.
Yes.
So I was reading some information about this movie, and while they were discussing this movie in a book of interviews, Mann said something about his approach to this and what drew him to it that I found very interesting. And he says, Will Graham, the detective in Manhunter, finds himself trapped, stuck to some degree in madness and nightmare. It bores me to present the events of the story in a realistic style. My approach, instead, is to conceptualize the elements of the plot, taking into consideration the various torments of the human spirit. My aim is to exteriorize the spiritual in the expressionist manner, and this always leads me to reject realism. What drew me to the story was its connection to the essence of evil, which emerges in the process of dehumanization that leads a simple human being with no exceptional past to become a killer capable of the most terrible atrocities. And when victims cease being human beings, they become morsels, bits of matter. I want to understand just what this is all about, and also something about dangerous psychopaths and the influence of social context on the behavior of individuals, such as fascism and genocide, something I also explored in The Keep. And this rejection of realism and sort of taking what's happening in the story and putting it on screen in an expressionist way, I think is, first of all, a huge success in this movie in particular, but also such an interesting way to approach things.
I have not heard that Michael Mann quote before. I've heard vaguely why he wanted to do it. I've seen the documentaries that came with, I think, the director's cut, a special edition and everything. But that description that he gave, I'm just like, God bless you, Michael Mann. Can I have that, I don't know, put into my marriage certificate or something? Because I just... I never heard that before, and I was just like, he gets it, but then of course he gets it. He made the bloody film. And I'm like, that is it. That is exactly why I love Manhunter, where it's the perfect sort of surrealism for that thing, where it's, obviously we'll get into it, but some of the imagery by, I think, is it Dante? The
Dante Spinati.
Like, he's that Mann's guy, and obviously Mann has all this sort of imagery throughout his other films, but what he does in Manhunter, I'm like, everything has a choice, and it's grounded kind of in reality, but it's not, and it shouldn't be, and it is just beautiful. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe Manhunter, beautiful.
Yeah, well, I think that you're totally right, and I think that having a story that does feel like something we would still hear about, and it does ground it a little bit in reality. It's something for us to kind of hold on to, but the ethereal moments that happen in this, the sort of the stylization is just remarkable, and it's very evident in the color palette and the tinting scenes done by Dante Spinati, who, as we said, is the cinematographer, and he communicates all kinds of information about the scenes through the color, like the cool blues of romance and home life between Will and his wife, and you get these greens for scenes that involve subversion and knowledge being gained, and it's all, like, you see it pop up, and it's the kind of thing where the first time you watch it, you're like, oh, it just looks nice. Like, it just looks like a good looking movie. But then as you revisit it and you really take in the movie more and more, you really start to pick up on what these colors are trying to represent and what they're trying to communicate about the movie and the situation that the characters are in to us as an audience.
Yeah, it's just, I know it's a cliche to say it works on so many levels, but it works in so many levels and in different shades of that levels, which is a lot of blue, a lot of green. And what I also love is, if we're talking about the sort of the lighting of each scene, where it goes from the cool blue, and also what I love is from, like, where it starts off from the POV shot and it's all this sort of dark backlit, and what you would expect would be the next scene would be somewhat dark or something that, again, I love Seven, but that palette is exactly the opposite of Manhunter, where it's just gritty and it's just miserable, but it has to be miserable because have you seen the murders that are done in that film?
Grotesque.
Yeah, absolutely. But with Manhunter, what I love is with the beginning scene, it's the POV, tense, and then we're on a freaking beach, and it's the best beach I've ever seen. I got a feeling that Mann probably staked that location out himself. I think he does it all himself because he's the guy from Miami Vice. He knows all that. He'll know what the best colours are, best places to do the shooting.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and I think it really works well together. The name change from Red Dragon to Manhunter, there's two reasons that I found speculated about.
I know one.
All right.
Yes. I want to jump the gun
Umar,
on this one.
Call on you.
Year of the Dragon the year before, in 1985, which was another DG. I love this film, and I love finding out information about some, like with Obsession, you just got to know more about something. So I was like, it was DEG. It was a flop. Was it Mickey
big
Rourke?
time flop.
Mickey Rourke in that one?
I believe so. Not exactly a success.
No,
for Dino.
But what I love about him is, again, when you're going back to when Dino said, his name is Manhunter, it'll do, which I'm not surprised. He was like, it's Red Dragon, it's going to be crap. Even though it's totally different plot and everything's totally different, it's going to be red. That was the first one I know, but I'm interested to see what the second point would be.
Yeah, so William Peterson, who goes on to play the role of Will Graham, said that it was also related to the string of kung fu movies that had been released in the 70s, both by Bruce Lee and his imitators, and that Dino didn't want people to expect an action movie like that. That said, everyone involved, except for Dino, did prefer the name Red Dragon.
I know we've got the canon documentary. I want a Dino documentary on how of the because that have been like some amazing films with the DEG group, but and
he works with some real weirdos.
And I'm like, just whoever did the canon doc, please look into this guy's life. And another guy that I want to know about is it Saban?
Yes.
The
yeah.
All three of these guys are very, very interesting. And if you ever want to have a documentary that might, I don't know, win an Indie Award or somewhere, pick on one of these two guys. That's all I'm saying. Just point the camera at them.
I totally agree. That Canon documentary is really good. I recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
A lot of interesting research went on to create an authentic feeling to this movie, starting at the top down. While spending 3 years writing the movie, Mann spent time with the Behavioral Sciences Unit to learn how profiling works, and led Brent Turvey, current director of the Forensic Criminology Institute, to call the movie one of the most competent blends of cutting-edge forensic science and criminal profiling he'd seen.
Bless you. God bless
you. There you go. Mann also struck up a correspondence with Dennis Wayne Wallace, a convicted murderer and paranoid schizophrenic who'd become obsessed with a woman he barely knew, killing people to, quote, save her, and becoming convinced that In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida held a special connection for them, which is, of course, alluded to later in the movie when that song is utilized in a pivotal moment.
I don't want to say thank you to this guy, but, well, whatever.
But William Peterson also was involved. He did a lot of research. He worked with the Violent Crimes Unit at both the FBI and the Chicago PD, reading files and talking with investigators, including those on the Richie Ramirez case, about how they coped with the disturbing crimes and learned to compartmentalize. However, he made sure to mention, as we see so frequently from the violence rates of police officers, both in the field and domestically, that it is not really possible to shut that off, and that it does impact you, and trying to just leave it behind it's not really feasible.
No, I think it was one of the documentaries that I saw that Peterson, that after he did the film, he has his curly sort of, is it brownish? You can't really it's
like a dirty blonde
sort of hair. And after he was done with the film, and obviously with the research he did, he had a bunch of plays he had to do, and it stuck with him. The film stuck with him mentally, and so much so that he actually had to dye his hair like blonde to just get rid of Will Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm sure not only was having to get into that mindset, but all the research that you do kind of really leaning into the depravity and the sort of low points of humanity, it is the kind of thing that can really stick with you. And, it's a difficult role, I think, that he signed up for in this.
Yeah, and he nailed it spot on, because I know we're talking about Manhunter, and I don't like talking about the film that was made about 15, 20 years after this by Brett Ratner. That's all I've got to say. How did he get attached to that? How? With that cast? No. I'm just a mini rant, but Ed Norton, brilliant actor, love him in so many things, but William Peterson is Will Graham as far as I can tell. He got it spot on, and that is just...
Yeah.
You can tell that the research and all that stuff is just paid off on screen.
Yeah, I totally agree. First of all, big thumbs down on Brett Ratner from George. Second of all, I agree. I love Ed Norton. I think he's a really, really talented actor. But when you compare the two performances and you look at the way that Peterson really... He's able to internalize the sort of similarities and the darkness between the people that he's chasing and himself, and that is what Lecter latches onto.
Yeah,
that's what Dollarhide finds interesting, and that's something that I don't know that Norton really captured in the same way.
Also, to give credit to the cast, not the director, but to the cast, is that Manhunter was one of the first films of its kind. Just as Seven was the first of its kind, taking the serial killer sort of trait further, and then after Seven, you had multiple copies of it, and Manhunter was at the front line, and that's why Peterson didn't have any sort of lingering predetermined sort of ways to play it, or even Anthony Hopkins in the film, because in Red Dragon they had so many extra scenes because they're like, well, we know who's going to sell them.
This is what everyone liked. Right?
Exactly, which that's another, like, I'm just shaking my fist just thinking about Red Dragon, but
yeah, man.
But yeah, that's what Ed Norton had before. He had like 20 years, 15 years of Lecter mania and all that stuff. So he had to work with what he had, which he did fine, I guess. He did what he could.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Ed, you tried, pal.
We love you.
Come on the show. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. If you come on the show, I will apologise to you, but not to Brett Ratner.
I am not going to promise that I'll apologise to you, Ed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's keep it spicy. Yeah.
Joan Allen, who plays Reba McClane, she also did some research. She met with the New York Institute of the Blind. She walked around New York City with a mask over her eyes to get the rhythm of actually walking as though she were blind down. Tom Noonan, who plays Francis Dollarhide. Yes. Every time I accidentally called him Francis Dollar Hype, which that's a good DJ name.
Yes. With the teeth and the stockings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
He started doing research on serial killers, but he was disgusted and decided to kind of take it in a direction that he didn't really see in his research, that of doing right by his victims, that he felt like he was doing this out of love, not to hurt them. Now, he did ask that during filming, nobody who was playing his victims or pursuers be allowed to see him, and for people to call him Francis, which led to separate flights and hotels from the rest of the crew and the cast, and he would just sit in his trailer alone in the dark.
There's a brilliant story I know about Tom Noonan and Francis Dollarhide regarding his casting. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's basically Michael Mann and the casting director, they were just there doing the roll call for who's going to play Francis Dollarhide, and Tom Noonan came up, and it was that scene where Lowndes and Dollarhide meet, so it was that intense scene. Mm-hmm. And what Tom Noonan was doing, he was giving his monologue that he was doing, and first he was just starting off as normal, but then as he was rising in intensity, even though Michael Mann was behind him, he felt Michael Mann coming up out of his seat, getting excited, seeing what Tom was doing, and Tom was feeding off that energy, and he ended up terrifying this poor little lady who was in place of Freddie Lowndes, and it was just, that's how he got the role, because he was just so terrifying, so intimidating, and then he could feel Michael Mann just visibly getting exciting that he was scaring this poor little woman.
You know, I think that really comes through because part of what makes the character interesting is that there is a lot of sort of like questioning that happens in terms of like what he's doing. And, you know, in that particular scene, when he sees the fear that he has struck in this character of Lowndes, you know, he does sort of like come into his own in the scene, and he does like let that energy kind of pass between them. I think that he really brings something to this role that would have been very easy for this to just become another like random killer.
Yeah, he makes it his own, and I think it's also because before this, well, what did we have? Maybe, well, which Dirty Harry was it? Where there was a, based on was it Zodiac?
Oh yeah,
one of those sort of, because basically when there was like killers in the past, they were all sort of, hey, I'm crazy, look at me, I'm gonna, all this sort of stuff, but. Yeah, that research that you mentioned that Tom Noonan did, it makes sense because it really shows on the screen of how scary he is, but how soft and gentle he is at the same time, despite being 6'7".
Yeah.
Like, that is just scary.
I did also think it was pretty funny that the first time he met William Peterson was when Peterson comes crashing through the window. Yes.
Hi, I'm Will. Hi, I'm Tom. How you doing?
Yeah, he literally like shows up like right in his face too. Like that's how they meet. That's a funny image. But because of this decision, this and his size, which he had just started bodybuilding as well, the atmosphere on set when he showed up was very tense, and people were kind of scared of him in a way that he was able to leverage into the isolation of his actual performance. I think that's really where the difference lies, is in him truly not feeling like a mean person, but feeling like an isolated person.
Yeah, and I also love speaking of, Dolarhyde Noonan, is they were going to have, how that Ralph Fiennes in the remake has the tattoo all over, and there's really like a whole part of the Red Dragon, and I know it's true to the book, but come on. but what I love about it is they had the tattoo in testing, and he had the big tattoo all over him, and then I think it was Mann who said, "Nah, this trivializes him, get rid of it." And I'm like,
yeah,
yes, it would have trivialized him. Like, oh yes, this is the big dragon I have on my chest, this is why I do stuff. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, there are some interesting removals from the book. Like, I believe that the tattoo, like, talks to him in the book. It's been a while since I read it.
Yeah, and he also gobbles it up in New York.
Right.
He does. That happens in the... Because, it's been, like, a while since I read the book, but it was, in fact, I saw the film multiple times. I was like, oh, it's based on a book. I seek out the book, and I was like, oh, this book exactly like the film. But then when it was parts where it wasn't like the film, I was like, the film did it better.
They were right to cut this.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think that it is interesting that Mann did have that sort of insight. They did film the scenes, like you said, where he had this big old tattoo on his chest. Spinati agreed that it trivialized the struggle that the character faced, and so they cut those and reshot the additional footage to replace it. But Spinati did note that in doing so, scenes which he felt had been captured in the beautiful aesthetic of the others were lost because production didn't have time to recreate the original lighting conditions, which I think is interesting, sort of an interesting decision to have to make that sacrifice and compromise that artistic vision in order to, I think, do justice to the character.
That's a real, well, not Sophie's choice, it's a real Dante's choice. Like, Dante. Like, I understand why he did it, but that's generally made me a bit sad. I was like, would have been more beautiful shots in this movie, but they would have had a giant ugly tattoo in it.
It's true. It's so true. These are the decisions that haunt us, Umar.
Forever. This is a regret that I'll take to my grave, I know for sure.
So I also saw a list of names considered for the role of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, and each one made me go, wow, that would have been cool too.
Yes, they are.
John Lithgow,
Yes.
he's played a bunch of bad guys over the years at this point. Mandy Patinkin, which that's an inspired choice. I'm like, that would have been really interesting. Willie the Freak Friedkin himself, which I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And then Brian Dennehy, who I do like, but Dennehy himself recommended Brian Cox when he declined, and the rest is history because Brian Cox does an absolutely spectacular job with this performance. And I know that everyone is like, Anthony Hopkins this, Tony Hopkins that. But Brian is out here putting the damn work in, folks, and he absolutely kills it. Pun intended.
Yes. And the brilliant thing about this is he is literally in one place. He's always in his cell. He's in nowhere else. Mm-hmm. And when I recently rewatched this a few days ago with my wife, who has seen it before, but the thing is, she was like, which one's this again? Because God bless her, all the weird films I watch, she sticks around with me for them, so I really do appreciate that about her. But when she came to the scene where Will first meets Lecter, who is spelled Lector in the which is awesome, yeah. But when
it's better,
yeah, exactly. And then by the end of that scene, when Will has to leave, she was like, "Oh, that was a good scene, that wasn't it? He was really good." I was like, "Yeah, that guy is awesome." And speaking of that research, what you will probably talk about it here. What Brian Cox did in terms of research, it's like everyone did their work on this movie. Everyone put their punch their what's called work card in and all that stuff. They earned the hours. They did.
They absolutely did. And yeah, to your point, he said that he studied the Scottish killer Peter Manuel, who he said was a sociopath and didn't have a sense of right or wrong. And he felt like all the best movie villains were from Europe and that they just had a certain je ne sais quoi. So
yeah. And I'm pretty sure that was it Cox who said like evil isn't having been like going back to when I was saying the Dirty Harry, which again Dirty Harry's awesome and all that stuff, but obviously this is like the next stage of the sort of nuanced serial killer, but it wasn't being crazy or telling people I'm going to kill, I'm going to do this, but it's the removal of good, a removal of a morality, which his Lecter definitely had. And like I said, he was only in that cell. Anytime you see him, he's on the cell or on the phone, and he was creepy throughout.
Yeah, even the moments where he's being friendly, and I'm doing big finger quotes here, You know, he still has this real menace to him. You know, the friendliness people note doesn't really extend to his eyes. And he's just great. He's really good in this.
Can I have your home phone number? How he says that. And I can almost pull it off because I know he's Scottish, but close enough. But how he says that always chills me whenever... Because you see, look at Will's response and he's like, fuck no. But he doesn't say anything, but he's holding his face. I'm like, fuck you, Will, mate. No.
Yeah. There was also a list of alternates that Dino wanted for Will Graham, including Richard Gere, Mel Gibson, and Paul Newman, but Mann insisted on Peterson after seeing his performance in To Live and Die in L.A. Again, we've already talked about how much Peterson is really bringing to this. I think that he is the right choice for this. You know, none of those other ones, at least with the people playing Lecter, I was like, you know, I could see what they might bring to it. Yeah. I don't think that any of those actors are bringing anything that Peterson isn't also bringing to this role.
He was the perfect person for this role. I can't think of... I know there's fans of the Hannibal TV show, which, again, I'm fine with. I'm not one of the super fans who sort of, stands beautiful Lecter. What's his name? Tall guy. Forgot his name.
Oh, Mads Mikkelsen.
Yep. Him as a Lecter, like, yeah, I'm fine with that. But the guy who plays Will Graham, he's, again, fine, but he's no Will Peterson in Manhunter.
Who is, am I right?
Exactly.
The movie finally released on August 15th, 1986, grossing $8.6 million in the U.S. on a $14 to $15 million budget, perhaps sunk by critics really laying into the look of the movie, saying that it was style over substance, although over the years the reception has warmed up, especially as people revisit and appreciate the look of it compared to the more well-known Silence of the Lambs and Brett Ratner's follow-up adaptation of Red Dragon in particular. You know, part of what people like about this movie is the look of it. And, you know, people might... I've seen people throw around the word dated, and I think that they are really underestimating...
Heresy.
First of all, yes, heresy.
Yeah.
And second of all, I think that they're really underestimating the importance of sort of an archival look at the aesthetic of the time, you know?
Yeah.
This movie functions as a time capsule. It brings us back to the mid-'80s when things were soaked in neon, and, you know, you have these incredible blues and greens that permeate the movie, and you look at something like this compared to the, like, puke green tint that is on so many movies these days.
Yes. When it comes to my sort of perfect directed aesthetic, it's between Michael Mann and John Carpenter. And they're both sort of, if there's a Venn diagram, there's a big crossover between the two, because what they did was in a short amount of time, you know, their sort of niche sort of style, visual style that they were bringing, but they did it so well. So it was really weird when I heard about, at the time, critics hated it. I think they were probably... Because what I've heard before is, because this is back in the day where if you were a TV director, you do TVs, or, you know, TV actor, you don't cross over. You know how it was. It's all... Now Netflix owns everything and Amazon, it's fine. But back then it was like... I got a feeling that the critics sort of thumbed their nose towards Mann because he was the tacky Miami Vice guy. What's he trying to do?
Stay in your lane, man.
Yeah, man, with two N's. But
exactly.
That's why I'm like, because if this was done by any other director, it probably would have, at least at the time when it released, it would have been a bit more, yeah, this is exactly what such and such wanted to do. But they're like, this is TV, man. No, he doesn't belong here.
I think you may be right. And I went to go check in on what Roger Ebert had to say, and he was not reviewing at the time, so
that's good.
No input from Raj.
Yeah.
He did like Heat, though, I will say.
But that was because he probably saw De Niro and Pacino. Was like, I got it like this in their prime. And Heat is a brilliant movie, but it's like Heat was the Paddington 2 of its time, wasn't it?
Wow.
Like I think
I'm always saying this.
Yeah. I just thought of it now, but yeah, I don't think truer words have been told. That Heat is the Paddington 2 of 1995. You can take that to the bank.
I will take that to the bank. Yeah. I'm going to tell everyone that now.
Yeah.
To get into the actual movie, it does a great job of getting you off balance right away, which you sort of talked about this opening a little bit already. But first of all, Mann has them use varying frame rates to make things feel a little off, which is by itself very effective. But also, it's very freaky for him to put us in the shoes of an intruder right away. You know, watching someone sleep with a light pointed at them, and they start to wake up, and we transition away to the credits with no clue of what's happened to them, just heavy breathing. Oh, yeah. It's really freaky.
What I also love about it is that it sort of mirrors the scene later on, because it has a shot of Dollarhide's van. Mm-hmm. I think it's either right at the beginning or right at the end, and it starts off with his van, and it's really weird. Yeah, it's like, and then the POV shot, and then you just get the neon green Manhunter, which is a very very of its time. But that's some typography I want on my computer. Like that'll be my go-to. I want to type in letters in that sort of font, bright green.
When it comes back in, though, we see two men sitting on opposite sides of a dead branch on the beach. Really amazing framing, as we've already discussed, but get ready to hear that a lot, because I'm going to talk about the framing in this movie a whole heap.
Yes, and I'm going to let him, so deal with it.
The man on the left is Will Graham, a former profiler for the FBI, now retired after being attacked by Dr. Lecter and having a breakdown. The man on the right is his former boss at the FBI, Jack Crawford, played by Dennis Farina, who I think is very good in this movie.
We haven't even talked about Dennis Farina yet. Oh, Dennis Farina was brilliant. Talk about a glow up from Thief. What was he? He was a henchman in Thief. Yeah, like a guy who got shot. To Jack Crawford, just in the matter of 5 years. That is just like, good on you, Dennis.
Hell yeah, good for you, Dennis. The reason that he's there, though, is because they need Will's help with a new serial killer case, someone who's operating on the lunar schedule. Now, we see some of Jack's domestic life and what he'd be giving up, which I think is really important to sort of establish these stakes early on. And he's protecting turtle eggs with his son, he has sex with his wife, and yet he still can't resist being drawn in.
I remember about 10 years ago, when I was, even totally obsessed with this movie, I actually read the script. Obviously, I used it as a ruse of, I write scripts for comics, I need to learn how scripts are done, but also I wanted to read the script on Manhunter.
Sure.
And what Mann wrote in the script was, when Jack Crawford shows Will Graham the pictures of the Leeds and the Jacoby family, when he shows a picture of the family,
right.
Mann even writes in the script, instead of showing gruesome crime scene photos, he shows a family, and he's like, that you put that in the script, saying like, we expect crime scene photos, but we show family photos here, and that is really interesting. Even in the script, that Mann was able to tap into that sort of nuance of Manhunter.
Yeah, Will promises that he's going to just look at the evidence and stay away from any chance of physical harm, but once you're part of the investigation, that's not really like a promise that you can make.
It's not up to you, Will. It's not you can't really make those calls, but...
Right. He heads to Atlanta to visit the most recent crime scene. One thing that I really like here is that so much of this really does deal with the symbiotic between profiler and killer, and that it's all about how he has to really tap into his dark side to get into their head. And in this moment, as he enters the house, he looks very much like an intruder himself, really putting himself in the killer's shoes right away and drawing that parallel for us to sort of immediately be like, I can sort of see the setup of this theme that's going to be coming into play.
It's also like the little step where when the police officer drops him off at the crime scene, and you have the awesome close-up shot of his tape recorder and the Olympus camera. I'm telling you, it was just proper freaky when I was watching with my wife, and I was saying, there's going to be a close-up of that Olympus camera, it's going to be in my head, and right there, and she was like, how do you know that? I'm like, I've seen this one millions of times, it's awesome. But then when the copper says, do you want me to go in? He goes, no. And it's like, that is, I haven't seen that before in a film. Obviously, they've always done it ever since, but that was just a really interesting little thing. Little things really make a lot in this movie.
Yeah, and when he finally enters the master bedroom, it's soaked in blood. The mirror is
horrible.
Smashed. It's gruesome. This is the first real look at sort of the aftermath that we've seen, because as we said, we don't see what happens in the cold open. The photos are of the living family. And for us to sort of be thrown into this room where everything is dark until he turns on the light and we're just hit with it, it's really shocking how much of the viscera has been just spread around the room.
It is jarring to say the least. It is, even when he's in the house and like you said, he looks like an intruder walking in. You're like, I'm sure they would have cleaned it up and it would have been just, he would have... No, there's blood everywhere, and it is... I got to remember, I watched this at the same age I was watching Clockwork Orange, so I was like maybe about 13 or something like that, and I was like, what is this weird movie? And then instantly drew me in. I was like, whoa. Its juxtaposition throughout this film is just amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And, he takes his time, he goes through the forensics, and then he returns to his hotel to watch the home movies of the family that the FBI gave him. And I gotta say, I love the look of this hotel atrium.
Oh, I love my that shot of that elevator going up. That is peak Mann. If you were going to like say peak Mann, it'd be that weird glass elevator, Willy Wonka elevator that goes up.
I did look it up. That's the Marriott Marquis in Atlanta, once the largest atrium in the world, until dethroned by the Burj Al Arab in Dubai in 1999. A fact I bet that not one single person will care about except me.
And me. If I ever make my way over to the States, me and you are going to that Marriott.
Wow.
We are going.
It's a date.
Yes.
He watches the tape and he tries to get into the killer's mind, suspecting correctly that the killer touched their eyes with his gloves off. This is the first sort of real insight that he brings, and we see that he is sort of slipping back into it, because he is like, how is he doing it? Like, it's about being seen and the visual nature of it, and oh man, it's eerie.
It's a soliloquy he gives to a VCR recording, like it's and I also love when he figures it out and he pushes pause on the VCR so violently and he rushes to the phone. I'm like, yeah, own it, man. That is brilliant. Yeah.
He's fucking ready.
Yeah.
The next day, Graham and Crawford are accosted by Freddie Lowndes, a tabloid writer who wrote sensationalized articles and even a book about the Lecter case, taunting Graham, who throws him onto a car. Clearly a very sore point for old Will here.
Shatters the windshield, and I think that's the first F-bomb we hear in the film.
I did laugh that they just walk away from that car.
They wrecked it.
Yeah. Like, they are literally the FBI.
Like,
they're just like, we're just gonna walk away from this.
Yeah, go tell your beat cop, but this is below my pay grade. But you caused it. I didn't hear that. Bye, see you, got to kill him.
It is also worth pointing out some of the color stuff here. Like I said, green tends to show up when things are being learned or confirmed. There's a sense of discovery or subversion. And as you can see here in the background, as they confirm the fingerprint theory, and in the shirt that William is wearing, although his shirt is sort of an aquamarine here, which I think is interesting, because this is still the point where they're like blending the discovery of him slipping back into this role and learning more and leaving his old life behind, but he is still clinging to it as a safety net. It's still not so far behind that he's completely lost it, and his tie is blue as well. I think that not only in the lighting, but in the clothing choices, we see a lot of these colors pop up again in really interesting ways.
That is very, very insightful, George, and honestly, that I didn't want to interrupt at all, because that is, I haven't noticed that before, but subconsciously I would have noticed it, because I always used to say, look at those funky, because what sort of pattern are they? Are they cotton? They look like wool.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's very strange because Atlanta is a hot place, isn't it? So I'm like, that's the things that are going in my head as well. But it's, yeah, now that I think about it, it is that sort of murking of where he was, where he's going towards, and also who's the actor who plays Lowndes, Stephen thingy.
Oh man,
he's the guy who's in Quiet.
Apologies, Stephen.
Not Quiet Place. What's it called?
Don't Breathe.
He's the blind guy.
So what's his name? Freddie Lowndes, right?
Freddie Lowndes, and that's why, like, when you look at him, he's like a little scrawny nerd in there, and then he plays like a marine.
Stephen Lang. I did not freaking recognize him
exactly.
At all. Holy shit!
And like when you look at him as Freddie Lowndes, when he goes like, gotcha, and like he's got this preppy hair, he just looks like an arsehole. Fast forward 30 years, he's like a marine in Avatar, and he's a psycho guy in Don't Breathe, and he was this close to being Cable in Deadpool. It's insane, but if you go back to the mid-80s, he was an arsehole at Tatler magazine. But yeah, it's...
You have truly blown my mind here. I had no idea that was him.
Hey, that was my only goal for today, so I'll leave you to it. It's been a good chat. And
to get back into the mindset, Graham says that he's going to visit Dr. Lecter in his cell.
Yes.
He does want to ask for his insight, since the doctorate that he has as Dr. Lecter is in psychiatry, but he also, like he said, he needs to sort of get himself back into it. He needs to see Lecter. This scene is one that Spinati himself has called out as not only just being like a really great scene in terms of the performances, but also for representing the mise-en-scène of the movie and Mann's predilection for framing things well, drawing attention to the constant position of the cell bars within the frames. Even as the shots cut back and forth between the two characters, the bars always remain between them.
And it's a really interesting bar. Sorry, it was because they have glass in the middle of them, which I've never seen before, because they're bars, and it took me a good couple of times watching the film. I'm like, oh, there is glass between those bars, which is a very Michael Mann thing to do, where there's bars, and I need that extra glow of the reflection of the glass.
And so I had found this quote from Spinati that I thought was interesting. He says, "There is nothing in Manhunter which is just a nice shot. It's all focused into conveying that particular atmosphere, whether it's happiness or delusion or disillusion. In this case, conveying the prison that both men are in, and once again drawing a parallel between Will and the men that he chases. There's also a slight Dutch angle to the wide shots in this scene that give you that sense of unease." I think that this is really interesting, and like I said, the framing is such a huge part of this movie that, body language communicates a lot, but for us to really be able to glean so much about the characters and their state of mind from just the way that the shot itself is composed is something that is not easy to do, and I think speaks very highly of Spinati and Mann both.
Yeah, it is just how it's done. And the thing is, obviously, my disdain for Red Dragon is one thing, my indifference for Hannibal is another thing, but I do love Silence of the Lambs, and I do like the dungeon Migs being Migs in the corner and all that stuff. Jonathan Demme, who did that one.
Yeah, John Demme,
yeah. So that is, he went bold, and it was a really good film, and everything about that worked. I just love that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it's so clinical. It's literally like a hospital, isn't it? It's just like a typical hospital, but how it's angled and how they play off each other, and how, because it is, you get the Dutch angle when you're looking into Lecter, but when you look at Graham, it's pretty much square on, which sort of just heightens his uneasiness, and like he wants to get back with Lecter, like understand what's going on, but Lecter just does so many offhand remarks that just like he's about to leave at any moment, like he just can't be there.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of really great dialogue throughout it, but one thing that really sticks out to me is right at the end, when Lecter agrees to help, he does also say that he knows that Will is there really to, quote, get the scent back. And he says, "You know how you caught me, Will? Because we're just alike. Smell yourself."
Yes.
And Will literally runs out of there.
And we haven't even touched about the soundtrack yet, because I love when the score, when he's running down the sort of architecture of the places that Mann has chose, is just like, I don't even know what that building is.
I think it was like the High Art Museum.
Yeah, something like that, which is bonkers, because it goes down in this sort of like a, it's not steps, it's like a
crisscross.
Exactly. and the score is just going louder and louder, and that is just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really is brilliant. I think that it's his biggest fear is being like these people, and Lecter has nailed him again, that he can't get at him physically, but he can still get under Will's skin. And for him to say we are the same, that is the worst thing that he could have said to Will.
Yeah, and I just love the sort of little lines he has just chipping away at him, where he goes, like I mentioned, the "Can I have your home phone number?" And I love how he just lets it hang, and he just stares at him with his slick back hair. Again, I love that Lecter he looks like a greaser.
Oh yeah.
And
he's greasy as fuck.
He is. Well, it's all the human meat he eats, obviously. The gristle just stays there. but it just also when he goes like, your hands don't look like cop hands anymore, and that shaving lotion was something that a child would choose. There's a ship on the bottle. These are lines that are in the book, but just how Cox delivers them. Like, if I ever do have the chance of meeting Brian Cox, I'll be like, can you just say to me that if you want the scent, smell yourself? And he'd probably look at me and say, who the fuck are you? Get out of my way. But if I can, that'll be one thing I'll request from him.
To touch on the clothing again, when Will gets outside, he loosens his shirt and his tie, which, as we've already established, help represent his family with the blue, and the safety of his family is being pulled away because, as Lecter claims, he has the scent now. He can dive into this and pulls that tie away, and there goes that family safety. Freddy does spot him leaving, though, and Graham's mug is splashed across the front page of the Tatler the next morning. Lecter fakes a call to lawyers and actually manipulates a secretary into giving him Graham's home address, which this is a great scene as well.
He's so smooth when he does this. He just... What I love about it is when he first brings the phone in, the security guard. What I love about this is how they don't treat him with something, oh, he's a serial killer. I'm pretty sure the security guard says, turn around, face the wall, or I'll miss your face. He says that, and Lecter just obliges, turn around and goes, and just the way he responds, I think he says, oh, thank you so much, I'll call you when I'm done.
Yeah.
And he just, but it's also when he says that lines like, oh, I'm sure she has a Rolodex next to her phone or something. He goes, oh, no, she doesn't. I bet there's a cold caddy there. It's so smooth. It's so smooth.
Scroll that finger right on down to G.
Yes, a Will Graham. And he said, oh, no. And he finds his home address. So easy.
Yeah.
And this is before Google and Facebook. It's insane.
We get a little bit of sort of that, like, wry humor there where he's like putting gum in his mouth while being like, I don't have the use of my arms, operator.
Yes. Yes, and I have to catch a Federal Express in about 5 minutes. It's just how that if that guy was to call me now, I would probably give him my bank account and card details just because he's so trusting.
He sure is. Graham flies to Birmingham to investigate the first crime scene, and Peterson said that Mann hadn't been allowed to film on the plane, so he just booked tickets for the crew on a flight from Chicago to Florida, checked in the equipment as their carry-on, and he convinced the passengers and crew to be cool by giving them Manhunter crew jackets while he filmed, which... Imagine being the people around there who are just like, check out this rad Manhunter jacket that I got for being on a plane with friggin' Michael Mann and the crew of Manhunter.
Was that kid an actor then or not? The one who saw the pictures?
I think that she was.
Because that would have been really, really like borderline like the Brood sort of stuff where, oh, just go with it, kid. It's fine. You're going to see some horrific pictures. They're not real. Well, maybe not. Who knows? Use it.
If David Lynch had directed it, maybe we would have gotten that behind-the-scenes featurette from Twin Peaks where he goes, make your noise.
David Lynch. Yes.
But... so they're on the plane here. Graham dreams of his wife and a big blue engine for his boat. Again, that blue coming in. Lots of interesting close-ups. Unfortunately, in real life, his folder fell open, spilling out the crime scene photos and scaring the shit out of the little girl next to him. I really like the dude behind him, peeking over the back of the seat.
What's going on?
That's classic airline behavior, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love in the dream that Will is sporting some nice pink shorts. Like, you're wearing them very well.
Dreamlike, that pink tends to come back in these ethereal dreamlike moments. I think that is, again, a very deliberate choice to give him those little pink booty shorts there.
Yeah.
That he's making them work, folks.
Yeah, you are working with them very well. But yeah, it is interesting that I always thought it was that with the dreams, with the close-ups, but this information you're adding regarding the colours it's part of the pun coming to light now. But, it's all making sense. Yeah.
Coming to light.
Yeah.
He does also, while he's there, he has his blue tie to anchor him, and he investigates and finds a candy wrapper at the base of a tree. When he looks up, he finds the rope of an attached tire swing. He climbs up there and he finds a few more clues, including a carving in the tree and a sawn-off branch, which they actually find out was not sawn, but clipped to ensure that he could see. And Crawford and Graham are contacted by the warden in charge of Hannibal Lecter, Fred Chilton, and they found a note from Francis Dollarhide to Hannibal now that he knows he's involved. And the note rambles, but ultimately is like, hey man, love your work, you get it. These people are just fuel for my transformation, with becoming capitalized multiple times, which is very deliberate as well.
Yes.
He also complains about the nickname that he got in the newspaper, which is the Tooth Fairy, and he specifically calls out Graham, and he got that nickname because he bites people.
Yes, and he goes, how he says, Investigator Graham intrigues me. or something like that, or interests me. I'm like, if a serial killer said that about you, get the fuck out of there, man. That is not the attention you need. And I do like it with it's kind of borderline. It's kind of like a borderline sort of high school sort of love letter between two people. Like, hey, like, you're awesome. I'm like, like a telephone call. It's great. These guys, my parents are bugging me again and all that stuff. But by the way, we got to do some killing this weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Well, he does give him instructions on how to get back in touch with him. And he says that when they analyze it, that there were instructions to communicate through the personal ads of the Tattler itself. When they find the ad, however, it's ciphered with a book code. But they don't know the book, so they can't decode it in time, and they can't plant a fake, because if it's the wrong book, Dollarhide will know it's a fake. And Graham gives the okay to run it as is without knowing what it is. Huge swing by Will Graham here.
Yes, and the whole sort of, from them finding the letter and that whole sequence of, it's probably taken for granted now with the whole CSI zoom in, zoom out. It was so laborious, but so, like, I remember the first time I watched it, and when I was getting into the whole story, I was it was so intense, but nothing. You don't ever see anything happen, but you see all these weird lasers happening, trying to decipher this code. And did you realize that one of the, I think it's probably Jimmy Price, who's a Prince guy. He is Bulldog from Frasier.
Wow. I did not realize that.
Because I'm like, that's Bulldog.
It is a really interesting scene. This whole like discussion here.
Yeah.
There, first of all, you may notice that there was green lights highlighting the photos of the notes and the teeth marks.
Yeah.
But also, more importantly, I think it's interesting to note, we saw Graham give this promise about how he was just going to look at evidence, and it's so quick that he's willing to offer himself up as bait despite his promise. That he says that because we have to run this, we're going to do a sting operation and I'm going to be the bait. And for him to be willing to dive into this dark part of himself and cast aside, which he has to cast aside, his sort of family unit and the domestic life that he had grown into, it's just fascinating how he has to sort of put himself in these isolated shoes, much like Hannibal is isolated in his cell and Francis is isolated in his everyday life.
Yeah, is because that whole scene towards the end where I think has that sort of Michael Mann motif that always happens where when there's multiple people on the line, he goes, "Who am I talking to?" And it says Graham. And I just love that. I just love these little touches where he goes, "Oh, it's Graham and Crawford," and they just go, and he gets that vernacular so spot on and so smooth and seamlessly. Because even when they go, "Oh, how about if we sweat Lecter?" or "We tried iodine," whatever it was. Oh, and he just told us
sodium pentothal.
That's it. Yes, and it was.
He gave us a recipe for
potato chip
macaroni
dip.
salad.
No, it was potato chip dip, and just throw away like that, and just how he turns and he goes, baiting with ourselves. And I do love it that half nearly remembered the name of the characters, not the actors, the characters, because I think Sidney Bloom, who's his sort of psychiatrist, goes, "I don't think that's a good idea." As soon as he says it, and he says it with a blank face. But whenever he says that, I always start laughing because I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea either.
He's right.
Yeah.
Graham gives an inflammatory interview to Lowndes, trying to get Dollarhide to lash out. They also, at this point, learn that the symbol they found carved on the tree is a Chinese good luck symbol, also found on a mahjong piece. That means, you guessed it, Red Dragon, baby.
And Dino just said, "Why you put that in the film? Don't do that. Don't. Stop it."
It means Manhunter.
Yes, it does in Chinese. It means this is not a kung fu movie, so put that in there in the script as well.
Before Graham puts himself through this sting operation, he visits home again, and the love scene with his wife is very dreamlike, and it is very ethereal, and it's kind of a break from the reality of hunting this guy. And I think that, we see the pinks and the yellows that lend into these moments sort of counterbalancing the blue, which are huge swaths of blue in this scene, because, again, it is sort of like him immersing himself in that safety to prepare himself for what's coming up next.
Yeah, and I think in the director's cut, they put an extra scene after Will says, put me in the sting operation, and just before he shows up with his wife, there's an extra scene that basically says, oh, by the way, we got your wife in a hotel here, because when I watched it again, because I watched the original version on the theatrical version on a few days ago, I was like, wait, they don't really explain how that happened, because they mentioned that.
Yeah, I assumed he just went home.
No, it was because they mentioned it's a hotel, and then I remember in the director's cut, it's a bit like a faded sort of shot, but it's in the same angle where he goes, oh, by the way, we brought your wife in, and he goes, thanks, and then they lead to that.
It was just Michael Mann leaning into the camera and being like, by the way, we have your wife in a hotel, okay?
Full ADR, yeah, it's Dennis Farina talking with Michael Mann speaking over.
He goes for a walk to act as this bait, but the man that they spring the trap on is, in fact, just a passerby. This is a very funny scene when the guy
you're
is
walking in slow motion. I use that every now and then.
Being mugged here.
Yeah, I use that all the time when just say when people aren't moving fast enough. Why are you all moving in slow motion? No one understands where it's from, except yeah,
it's a very good scene.
Yes,
and I don't blame you.
It's a very good one. It's a very the comical break that you get in Manhunter is very few and far in between, so you try to cherish them when they show up.
I think you're really right in that it would be very easy for this movie to feel overly grim. And I think that Michael Mann understanding when to give us a little bit of a break is an instinct that not everyone would have, and really helps to elevate this movie.
Oh yeah, I agree, 100%. He just adds it at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Lowndes is the one actually being targeted, and he's kidnapped by Dollarhide in the parking garage. Now, this is the first we're seeing of him, period. And it's not much, just his giant hand and his feet standing steady as Lowndes is lifted up with ease. That's some scary shit, man.
Yeah, that is so good, because it starts off with, and I love this little thing by Stephen Lang where he looks into his Porsche and goes, oh, someone banged my door. So he stares at it for a second, and then you just see Dollarhide just lift him up from the ground and chloroform him, and I'm like yeah, because he even has that shot underneath where Lowndes' little legs are just kicking away at nothing.
Yeah, it's intense, and Lowndes wakes up strapped to a wheelchair and being threatened by Dollarhide, and we kind of already touched on this when we talked about the audition, but it's a very interesting scene in sort of the way that Dollarhide comes into himself here, but this is our first time really seeing him. 55 minutes in, and I love our first look at his face, Lowndes is talking about how he's scared to look, and it creates this kind of interesting audience surrogate where we're also like, oh man, it's finally here, this is the moment, we're finally going to understand what this guy looks like. And when the killer finally gets him to do it, it is a very shocking image with like pantyhose covering the top half of his head and his huge hands splayed out.
And just his gentle voice like, here I am. And I'm pretty sure there's like a Art Deco dangling thing behind him. It's very jarring, very weird. The whole apartment is extremely like space themed. Like he's got a huge picture of like the landscape of Mars. Very like a painting of like the starfield. All kinds of weird spacey stuff. This is another deviation that I liked from the book, because the book was your typical Gothic castle where his grandma lived, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But this is a really good sort of a diversion from there. But regarding this scene, just want to tell you that the thing that got me into Manhunter was my older brother mentioned to me because we used to have these sort of compilation things on TV shows of the 50 scariest moments in TV, and I think this scene showed up in Manhunter, and like my brother told me about it. It was on like a Bravo sort of show, and it was this very scene, which they kind of spoiled, but they were like, this is Manhunter, and it's this terrifying scene. Then we're like, we gotta seek this out, and obviously when the next time that it came on TV, we got a trusty VCR in, recorded it, and then I'm pretty sure, because obviously the way we watch these shows is that we used to put the VCR in, record it, and then we used to pause it at adverts and then play it again, so it would be seamless. Honestly, we did the whole thing, but on that VCR, I'm pretty sure we had Manhunter, and the 1989 film Glory for some reason.
Wow.
We just put whatever was recording and just put it in
Power
there.
double feature.
Exactly. That is exactly how it should be. Yeah, that works. That strangely works as a double feature. But it was this scene that my brother told me about when I discovered the tape. He was like, "Oh yeah, watch this film." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is scary."
Yeah, it sure is. This is I mean, like you said, it does kind of spoil things to see it first, but it is a really powerful, impactful scene that it's easy to understand why it would draw someone in. I do also, while I speak about sort of the space aesthetic, this is something that just kind of occurred to me while you were talking, is that I think that this does play into the sort of isolation that this character is supposed to be feeling, in that he might feel a little alien compared to everyone else. He's this huge hulking man, and he had he had a cleft palate, right? And so he's got a scar from where that was repaired, and I think it's easy to sort of see him feeling at home, in like the world of science fiction and as like an alien or extraterrestrial, especially since he is attempting to break out of his human shell and become the Red Dragon. It's just a little something interesting. That might be a stretch. I don't know.
No, damn it, George, you've done it again. That's a new sort of level that you've added on to this film. That
wow.
Because I just thought, again, going back to the color palette when you first said it, was like, oh, that's pretty, and I was like, that's weird. He likes space, but then again, who doesn't like space? But that sort of isolation, that really makes sense for Dolarhyde.
There we go. Final answer, folks.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying it is.
Yes.
He gives a little presentation to Lowndes, starting with William Blake's The Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed in Sun, and then a photo of Mrs. Leeds from the beginning of the movie, Mrs. Jacoby, and then the next family that he's planning on murdering, before showing people after they're, quote, changing.
Yeah.
He also repeatedly asks, "Do you see?" Which, that's scary as shit. And
shivers, even just the "do you see?" And when it comes to the visceral images, we don't see them.
Right. We don't see them. And additionally, there is so much of his own methods are reliant on the audience and creating an audience for himself. And for him to be like, "Do you see?" and get an answer in the affirmative is, I think, really helping to push him further into his madness.
Yeah, it just fuels his literal fantasy that he has, where he's showing the whole movie to Lowndes, and it goes into that the sort of the speech, the soliloquy or the monologue that he gives later, where he says, "What you owe me is not fear. What you owe me is awe." And when he put his giant hands again, which I just love it, because Lowndes is scared and he doesn't want him to be scared. You should be in awe of me. You should be thinking, "There goes the Red Dragon. Oh, ain't he great?" Like that sort of thing.
Right.
But it's just brilliant that even at this moment, he still isn't getting exactly what he wants, and he can't control Lowndes how exactly he wants because of the sheer fear he has.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does come to rest on a photo of Lowndes and Graham, the one that was in the article, and Lowndes begs for his life. And I love, again, this framing here where it's mostly from the back of Dolarhyde as he speaks, except for specific emphasis points.
Yes.
And it works so well to sort of keep you off balance, to constantly be trying to see this guy. We've gotten a few glimpses of him here. He is covered up with the pantyhose. The way that it's angled, we're coming at it from a very low angle, which communicates his strength, but also makes it a little difficult to get a good look at him. It's just so well done, especially because he is not the important point in this exact moment. Lowndes starts reading this message that was written by Francis that threatens Graham, and as we just see him reading this and understanding what's about to happen to him,
oh God, yes,
it is brutal. It is just brutal and unflinching. They don't look away from that, which is like I just said, an interesting, deliberate choice that keeps the audience wanting more while also giving them something that they didn't know they wanted.
It is a testament to this film. I know the old adage is show don't tell, But
Yeah.
this, because obviously the other adage is once you know the rules, you can break them. And this film breaks the rules so well in such a way that is so effective. Because just Lang's delivery of that note, like, I haven't seen anyone, you see like the torture scenes or I'm being captured, that genuine fear. And I think it kind of plays back to the whole sort of thing where what's his name, Tom Noonan went all the method on Francis. No one can see me, keep me isolated. I think Lang is the sort of guy who can sort of play off on that I haven't seen this guy forever. Maybe he is going to kill me. Maybe I have signed up for a snuff film. Who knows? I'm terrified.
Yeah, and he finishes this recording and then gets freaking gnawed on.
Oh yes.
By Noonan.
Oh, it's like so good when because you hear Lang whisper over and over again, which is like a true thing when people are like captured saying, if they take off the mask, I'm a dead man because I can't. Like he keeps repeating that to himself, and then when Noonan goes to grab the glass box, he lets out a little giggle. If you watch that scene again, he's walking in, and then when he grabs the, we'll seal this with, and then when he picks up the box and he puts in the teeth, and what I love about this is the teeth, obviously in the book, is from his grandmother who used to torture him. You don't need that in the movie. He just has creepy teeth. He puts on the teeth, and then when he puts it on, and it's this brilliant silhouette of him, the lighting is just brilliant, and he just lets out a little, and then he walks towards him. Honestly, and like I noticed that on like my third or fourth watch on this film, and that just made the scene even more terrifying because he just laughs as he walks towards him.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a brilliant move to use other teeth.
Yeah,
and sort of create.
Good luck finding them.
Right, exactly. A fake dental record of him. Like, it's really smart.
Yeah, he's a clever killer, clever evil man.
Sure is. Yeah. And he ultimately, after chewing on him, lights Lowndes on fire and wheels him back into the parking garage of the Tadler as a warning.
I want to spin off with that security guard. That guy,
He's great.
I feel so sorry for him. Like, just what happened after that, because poor guy.
He was never the same, for sure.
Oh, no. Couldn't eat barbecue ever again.
The FBI finally cracks the message left for Dollarhide, and it's Graham's address and a note that says, "Save yourself, kill them all."
Oh, this is so good. I love it because Jack Crawford says, "We've got everything sorted, don't worry about it." And he's like, "No, tell me. No, it's fine. It's all sorted. No, tell me." Okay.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's so impactful. It's so scary. When we've seen the relationship between Will and Hannibal, like we said, the friendship doesn't really extend to his eyes, but there is a certain what feels like respect there.
Yeah.
And then to find out that this note was like, by the way, fucking kill this guy's whole family is just like, whoa.
Yes. It's like the same as, like, you know, you think you're making a friend at work or something like that. You're all getting along, and the guy wears the same clothes as you on the next day, or like tells the same joke that you were saying. Like, dude, not cool. But this obviously is on a much grander scale. But that sort of thing, like, dude,
Same thing.
yeah, I thought we were cool. Come on.
Yeah, I actually think those are the exact same level.
Yeah, mine might be actually worse because that happens more.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So true. So true. And the family doesn't actually die. So
Yeah, but the ramp up to it, I think that has to be a real police officer, the first one that opens at the door, because he's like, "Please go back inside." He's like, there's all this tension because like people might be coming into the house. Kim Grease in it, so she's like, oh, like, you know, looking around the house and everything. And then the first thing we get, I think this might be Mann's attempt at another centre of humour, because that guy who comes through the door, he is the most least threatening police officer I've ever seen.
meek for sure. I did notice a lot of police officers in the credits, so I think you are correct that is in fact a real police officer. Graham rushes home. His family is okay, though they're clearly petrified to the point of checking in from other rooms, which is also very like fucked up.
Yeah. He even says, like, is he afraid for me to be left alone with you? Because obviously he's read the Tatler now. He knows what his dad is.
Yeah, and he takes his son grocery shopping, and right in front of the Jell-O and God and everyone, he explains to his son about Hannibal Lecter's gruesome crimes and why he had to spend some time in a psychiatric unit afterwards.
So cozy. The most coziest story time about... It's like I just thought that it'd be the equivalent of a campfire story, but in a shopping mall. Because I remember, I also think that whole scene must have been at least 5 or 6 of the 12 million budget because there's so much product placement there.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah, you got your Nabiscos are there. They specifically call out Folgers.
What sort of coffee do you have? It's just brilliant. But I also love how, because they also talk about Jacob Garrett Hobbs, who is obviously, because Will Grimm's the guy who's successfully taken 3 serial killers on, and that's the one that I also love that no one ever talks about him in the movies at the very least, in that, because it's just the first one. And I just love how my favorite line in the grocery store supermarket scene was when he goes, well, what sort of thoughts are they? They're the most horrible thoughts you've ever had.
Oh man,
that sticks with you. I'm like, oh,
it's so good. Oh man, this performance is so good, guys.
It's the perfect balance of Michael Mann going about surrealism and all this visual stuff, but the subtlety and the underplayed sort of lines. Oh,
it's great.
Oh, so good. So good.
He tells his wife that he has to break his promise for good and try and get into the killer's head for everyone's sake to stop the killing. He sends them to her father's in Montana so that he doesn't have to worry about them, and stares out the window at his own reflection saying, "It's just you and me now, sport," which of course you can sort of take as a taunt to Dollarhide, but it's also interpretable as him talking to his greatest asset and biggest liability, his ability to get into their minds at his own mental well-being's expense.
And going back to the soundtrack, that you don't get the full swell of Graham's theme by Michael Rubini, I think, the composer who did the theme, but you get this little notions of Graham's theme, which is by far, I think you ever seen that episode in Community where Dean Pelton looks at the dogs and he goes, I hope this isn't awakening.
This better not awaken anything in me.
That happened to me with this when I was listening to this sort of synth music. I was like, I guess I like synth now. I really, really like it because it's awesome.
Yeah, hey, that's a good thing to have awakened in you.
Exactly.
In St. Louis, Dollarhide is working at his day job in a film lab, which you may notice the blue lights here, because this is the safety of everyday life for Francis. He does enter the black room, which this is soaked in green as he learns about the tools that he'll need for his next crime from Reba McClane, who this is his first time meeting her, I believe.
Yeah.
She's a blind coworker of his. He offers to take her home, and they quickly develop crushes on each other, though he does still fear rejection from her and refuses to let her touch his face.
Yeah, trust me, I'm smiling. That is just like, because he's reaching for his hand, and yeah, Reba McClane.
He starts to let her. She gets very close, and then he grabs her hand.
Yeah,
he's so scared of rejection.
Yes. It's the balance he has between, like, because he is a 6'7" guy, and the thing is, Tom Noonan has this gentle voice anyway. Like whenever he does other roles. And he's really leaned into that in this role where he's played up his giant size. And like he said, he just started bodybuilding and he's this big, scary thing. And just him delivering any sort of line, it just amps it up even further. Trust me, I'm smiling. Oh, God.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he wasn't smiling, people. He wasn't.
Yes, that is important to note.
Yeah.
He was not smiling when he said, "Trust me, I'm smiling."
He's a liar as well as a killer.
She lets him take her somewhere as a surprise, and it's to the zoo, where a tiger is about to get his tooth capped. Reba is entranced, running her hands through its fur and admiring its power despite the tranquilization, which obviously speaks to Francis, who clearly sees himself in this tiger. It's a really kind of beautiful scene to see him be so touched by this and feel like maybe he can let her in.
And he looked like he was getting off, but that makes sense. In a way, he was. And then also, Shriekback's Coelacanth, I think it is. Mm-hmm. That song, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a good one. The soundtrack to this is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a real tiger. It was like, it was knocked the fuck out. And I was like, they got right up close, and when he saw the teeth, I said, even if it's unconscious, no. That's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
She like shoves her hand like right in there too. She's like, "Oh, it's warm." It's like, yeah, no shit.
Like he's like, "Give me an hour, then we'll see who's warm." Yeah, like you don't want to fuck around with a tiger, man.
Meanwhile, while this is happening, perhaps the best day of Francis's life, Will is spiraling, sitting in an evidence locker and trying to peer into Dollarhide's soul. but he is getting closer and closer. Dollarhide takes Reba to his place after dinner. His apartment, soaked in green, contrasts her blue shirt, because she is obviously drawing him away from this subversion and killing and everything. But she has no idea that he's studying the home video footage of the next family of victims. And her just sitting there while he studies this, that's some scary shit too, man.
He just calls it homework or something like that. Just such a creep.
He really is. And there's a lot of intense close-ups again as he's conflicted between the desire he feels for Reba and what he feels as the Red Dragon, which is specifically that he is elevated beyond this sort of thing and humanity in general. And this is part of what Will eventually comes to realize, is that these murders are lashing out because of the fear of rejection and a desire for acceptance. And if he transcends, people will, as he says, owe him all.
Yeah.
And that desire for people to accept him and see him and be in awe, that is all so wrapped up in this that the first time that someone takes the initiative and is like, yeah, I like you, she kisses him, the tape runs out while they have sex, he is so overcome with emotion that he
cries into her hand.
He cries into her hand. He finally lets her see him in her own way.
Yeah.
And he listens to her heart.
Mirroring the tiger.
Exactly. There's just a lot of really great stuff happening in this scene. She is bringing him back towards humanity. She was wearing the blue. Now they're in the blue light. She represented that safety and pulling him back.
Yeah. Speaking of Manhunter, when people, like you said, may call it dated, I agree with you calling it as a time capsule of that period. However, there's a lot of relevance when you look at Dollarhide and the sort of the recent spat of killings of these rejected loners and the sort of it encapsulates what these outcasts are doing exactly, and the sort of not sympathy that they deserve, but the understanding of, oh, that's probably what you're looking for, but you're still fucked up and you're still a horrible mess of a person. But this was the first one to do it again, like I mentioned, not to do I'm crazy, I'm going to kill you, but it's more like I have pain, but it's also my pain doesn't justify what the fuck you're doing.
Right. I think that's exactly it, is that you can understand where they're coming from a little bit, but also like their actions are propagating the issue.
Exactly. Snake eating his own ass.
Classic Ouroboros situation.
Yes, there it is. I wanted you to say it because I can never say that word.
I may have fucked it up. Who even knows? I don't want to hear about it, people.
Yeah.
If I fucked it up, don't tweet at me about it.
Don't. You're not allowed.
He asks when they can see each other again. Yeah. And when she says, oh, to give her a second to think about it, he immediately recoils, which I think is very telling. Yeah. That he feels like he's putting himself out there. And the second she even takes a moment to consider when the next time they could see each other was, he says, that's it. Everything is exactly what I feared. I'm being rejected. She doesn't actually want to see me again. It's a very quick moment, but again, a lot of the subtlety that the performances are bringing to this movie balances out the big expressionist movements of Mann himself and Spinotti's lighting in a way that is so great.
Yeah, and it also plays back to the whole sort of Dollarhide fantasy of performance, and in his head, he's probably thinking, right, I'm going to go ahead with this, and I'm going to put myself out there, and then when he hears the "oh," he recoils, because he's like, this is not how the fantasy should play out now. You have accepted me. Why are you saying "oh"? But then, obviously, she does,
she says we can meet in my house.
That's it, yeah. No. Reba, no.
Big mistake, Reba, but he embraces her in relief.
Yeah.
That night, Will gets a phone call from Dr. Lecter, who taunts him about a killing that Will did in the line of duty, and that it feels good and gives you power that God has. And this is where things start to click for Will, and you can literally see green lights flickering up behind him as he sits in this room.
It's right there.
It's great. I mean, the room itself is awash in blue, but this green, as he starts to understand, pops up, and then he visits the crime scene in his mind, which is very freaky, as the eyes are completely empty to represent the mirrors that Dollarhide puts in there.
Oh, just going back to the phone call between Will and Lecter, That's another cozy thing. So cozy. And it just it's just like literally within the film, maybe a few days or a week ago, he was sending someone to kill your family, Will.
Hey, bestie.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? Oh, sorry about that. It's cool. I know. We all have our Mondays, right? That's probably what Will said.
Will and Garfield, both.
But I just love it how that Lecter is like on his bed with his. He has his feet up, doesn't he? If I remember, like he's just sort of chilling.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's on the phone and that's another thing. Why would they give him phone privileges after he tried to? But that's the thing that I'm cool with because I want to see him cozy talking to his best friend.
I feel like he probably legally has to be allowed to make calls to his lawyer, and he just did the same kind of jazz where he fucked with the operator and got him to dial out.
Yeah, we want Will Graham as your attorney. He seems like a good, reliable guy. Not off kilter at all.
He got his law degree on the street of Hard Knocks, baby.
Yeah, with the first and everything. He's a master of hard knocks.
That night, Francis was outside Reba's to meet her, but he sees her escorted home by another coworker. And as this happens, strong as I am.
Yes, prime movers. Yes. Oh.
And the lyrics echo his fears about opening himself up to pain as Francis.
Thing that I can't remember the lyrics. So good.
Strong as I am, there is something about this that scares me.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
When the man reaches over to get some pollen off her face, though, Francis sees him reaching in for a kiss. And again, this is quickly bathed in that ethereal euphoria pink and yellow that accompanies the romance and union of the previous Graham sex scene. And he is driven completely over the edge here. He rips up his dashboard with his bare hands, quickly dispatches the man with a few silent shots right in the dang gut.
Yeah, and he just yanks him into the bushes. Again, it's just an understated, like, even though he is 6'7", Tom Noonan is kind of slender. Like, he doesn't seem like Arnie, but it just sort of works with him just yanking him into the bushes. And
Yeah.
and I don't know if you notice as well, because obviously this is when the red dragon is present. He's not sort of hunched over anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's just standing up straight and
his full height.
Yeah.
It's the red dragon.
Yeah. He just what did he say? Oh yeah, Francis is gone.
Yeah, he says there. Well, yeah, he knocks on Reba's door.
Yeah.
And it's completely green, except for the same elated yellow-pink light casting from behind him. And he says, "It's me," when she asks who's there. And she opens the door and says, "Francis?" And he retorts that Francis is gone forever before abducting her. There is no more Francis. Only the red dragon is left.
And it's just that delivery where I think in the remake,
Francis is gone forever.
Yeah, the overstated, but no, he has the same sort of voice. He just has a subtle difference in his posture, and just the way he speaks is a bit like he doesn't do a deep voice. He doesn't grunt. He doesn't flap his wings pretending he's a dragon or anything like that.
Ah,
exactly.
Francis is gone forever. It's me, Bane.
That is the mashup that we never asked for, but we totally deserve. Yeah, if someone just put Bane in Manhunter, that'll
for
work.
You.
Oh yeah, that strangely would work because he's also terrifying.
Nobody cared who I was until I got the red dragon tattoo.
Yes. I need 300 millimeters of what did you say, the night vision stock footage that he needed from me. Yeah, that's what Bane needs to take down Gotham. Yes, I need all the
Take
footage
back your city
while I run rampant as the dragon.
Oh man, tensions flare between Graham and Crawford as Crawford is willing to write off this family as already lost, while Graham resents being dragged back into this life and being subjected to imagining all the future families killed unless he stops Dollarhide, which this is a very interesting scene that I feel like is easy to overlook when you're thinking about how Crawford is for real, just like, yeah, they're fucking dead already, let's just go home.
Yeah, just that 2-3 lines where they have like, where he goes like, oh, we'll have the Learjet prepped and ready. Anyway, it's fine. And he goes, you know well what I did when he said, you show me 1, 2, 3. I picture 3, 4, 5. And he goes, you're fucking right, and I'll fucking do it again. Like, don't you fucking tell me. It's so heated, and it's like I've had that argument numerous times in my life, and that is exactly how it goes. I'll fucking do it again.
That's right. But so Graham, they're up late. He's looking for a connection between the families. And Graham realizes that the padlock seen in the video but later removed is why Francis had the bolt cutters that he used on the branch. He also realizes that since he couldn't see the glass door from behind the house but was prepared with the glass cutter, he must have seen their home videos. Haven't you, my man?
And then Graham theme swells. This is what I was on like. This is
triumph. This is the moment.
When he looks at himself in the reflection as well. That moment's so good.
It's great. And you'll notice, folks, the light is that classic euphoric pinkish yellow from the building outside and the little bits around him.
Yeah. That is quite a catch.
He's soaking in the satisfaction of understanding that euphoria. He feels like he understands, and that this person must work at the film lab where the videos were processed. Reba awakes, disoriented and at Francis's house, and he overwhelms her with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida as she asks fearfully why he's doing this, and he lurks in the shadows.
My favorite hymn by Iron Butterfly.
Folks, remember The Simpsons?
Yes, and remember when Simpsons was very, very good? That's what I'm referencing right now.
I remember it fondly. Suddenly, he reaches out and grabs her face, from which she recoils, and he stalks away while she cowers in fear. And, it's like, I don't know what he expected her to do there when he grabbed her like that, but it feels like he's taking it as rejection.
I think it's also like a mirror of when she tried to touch his face and she recoiled. He's like, well, how about if I try it on you? Different situation, Francis. Different situation, man.
That's not the same, pal.
Yeah.
Graham and Crawford narrow down the names and discover that Dollarhide fits the description. When Graham sees the terrifying photo on the ID,
yes,
he's sure that it's Francis, and they head to his home.
One of the police officers, don't know the actor's name, but do you remember Barney in Silence of the Lambs, who was like Hannibal's caretaker?
Right.
That's the actor. Wow. He was in Manhunter. He was, the one who's the sort of SWAT guy. That's him.
Holy shit.
I can't remember the actor's name, but it's Barney. Barney, the caretaker.
Barney Rubble.
Yes, I was thinking the dinosaur, but whichever one.
Francis is prepping to kill Reba. He breaks glass for her eyes and a larger piece to do the deed with. And Will is approaching from the back. In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, still audible from the house, which is a nice touch that I like.
Yeah.
And he sees Reba struggling with Francis. Although he's moving slow, he sees himself in the glass as he holds it up to her throat, which is an interesting move. And since the police are still getting in position, rather than wait, Will throws himself through a window at Francis.
Yes.
Quickly slashes his face and throws him right into the damn fridge.
What's that fridge ever done?
Honestly. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. But Will is sitting there recovering. Dollarhide runs and grabs his shotgun, which he uses to shoot out the lights before bursting right through the freaking wall with the landscape of Mars on it. He does get shot a few times, but takes several cops with him and doesn't seem to be noticing the bullet wounds. Again, sort of that transcending that he was looking for. He goes to shoot Will, but Will gets him first, shooting him several times and finishing him off as the song begs, "Won't you please take my hand?" Again, sort of a nice moment of the song lyrics kind of reflecting what's happening on the screen, or at least the emotions that are going on. And, there's a lot going on in the scene. Firstly, because the shooting schedule of this movie was extremely fast-paced, and this was done at the end of principal photography, so most of the crew was gone already.
Yes.
And this means that there was no special effects crew on hand to do the blood splatter, so the rest of the crew just had to blow ketchup at them through hoses to provide the effect. So you just shoot some ketchup out at them.
That is very Evil Dead to me, and I love it. And yeah, you could tell it's ketchup, but it works. And
It does work.
yeah.
And they use the actual corn syrup for the pool of blood. So for these few moments, I think the ketchup is fine.
Yes, and it's also just worth noting that when you're talking about the transcendence of Dollarhide, he gets shot by the copper, but it takes Will to shoot him like 5 or 6 times. But these are the same bullets that before, when we were doing the sting, one of the gun specialists is, one round kills a guy dead. It took 6 to kill Francis.
That's right. And they also were like, you're not going to need that.
Yeah, you did.
Sure did need that.
Yeah, maybe even more.
Yeah. They also, speaking of the bullets, had to get around bullet impact because there was no special effects team. And Joan Allen, who plays Reba, talked about how Mann literally just had to hurl jars so that they would shatter.
I thought it was claps. I thought it was like clap.
Well, Peterson got a chunk of glass stuck in his thigh because while he was laying there on the floor, there's that moment where the eggs fly everywhere, and Mann is just standing over him throws a fucking jar at him.
That feels I think Peterson will be used to it because he just worked with William Friedkin, and Friedkin is kind of like that.
So true.
Yeah.
Just learn all about the broken coccyx of Ellen Burstyn.
Yeah, absolute madman.
Yeah. We talked about the removal of the tattoo, but the pool of blood that forms around Dollarhide here at the end of the scene is a pretty serious allusion to the Red Dragon tattoos that Francis has in the books. It looks a lot like the cover of the book itself, to have the wings kind of spread out on the side of him there. It looks really, really good. But this shot left Noonan lying in that corn syrup for so long that he actually fused to the ground. Because when it dries, it becomes basically cement. He's sitting there for hours, just friggin' stuck to the floor. That's dedication.
I'm thinking, when it becomes like cement, my brain instantly went to the bat gremlin in Gremlins 2. That's what Noonan is.
Hell yes. Where is that remake featuring Tom Noonan? That's the cement, the bat gremlin who gets dunked in cement.
Yeah, keep everything the same. Have Hulk Hogan in it, but Tom Noonan is the bat gremlin who flies around.
But the paramedics rush in. The sky is a beautiful pink and blue, demonstrating Graham's euphoria that things can return to normal and he can head back to the life that he left behind as he's reunited with his son and his wife. He says that he was going to wait until he had worked things out mentally, and she says, I didn't want to wait. And, again, you can check out the color of the clothing, blue and pink, just like the sky. And when his wife asks how many of the turtles made it, he says most of them, but he is satisfied that he did his best, in contrast to the beginning, when, again, unrealistically, he promises his son that they're all going to survive. Yeah. And at some point, all you can do is try and save the people that you can. And this is indicative of the whole movie, everyone. They sum things up.
There it is. George does it for you. And all this scored by the wonderful song by Red 7, Heartbeat, which I think he had in a Miami Vice episode as well.
Hell yeah, he did.
It's such a good song.
They walk off and stare out at the ocean to the hot tunes of that song, and it's fucking delightful, folks.
Yeah, it is. That is an earned... Well, it's not quite a happy ending, is it? Because Graham can relapse at any moment, and it feels genuine, but it is an earned ending. It is well worth it.
We are at the very least hopeful that he is able to put it behind him once again. And famously, no one ever killed anyone ever again after this movie.
Yeah.
So that worked out well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that win-win.
Absolutely. And now, Umar, we've reached the point of the episode where we sum up why this is not just a good horror movie, but is, in fact, the best horror movie ever made. And you're going to start things off, pal.
This is the best horror movie ever made because it does so much with so little. And it does it, well, it looks effortlessly, but going into the research, like the cast, the crew, and everything about it, it just invites you into this wonderful, weird world that is still grounded. You still have one foot in reality, but it just unnerves you at the right time, and it just and strangely, it has like nice, calming, cozy, comfortable moments, but it's just how it flows and how it goes into that satisfying end, which is vastly different than the book and the remake, but it is so much better in my opinion that it just, like I just said, it just is an earned ending to such a very, very well put together artistic. That's one word I haven't said yet, but it is so artistic and it's so meticulous. It is the best horror film of all time.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. To me, this is the best horror movie ever made, because it would be one thing if this movie just had an interesting thing to say about isolation and the relationship between serial killers and the people who pursue them. And it would be one thing if it just had some really incredible performances that were ahead of their time, in terms of creating this image of what we view a profiler as. This was before X-Files. This was before CSI. This was before it all.
This is like the precursor to Manhunter, which very similar in title as well. Very similar.
Yeah, exactly. And so it would be one thing if it was just that stuff, but for it to have an incredible aesthetic that also functions to elevate the movie, not style over substance at all, but style adding to the substance, reinforcing the themes that we've seen put forth in this movie, that is something that just isn't done. And for them to manage that while also having the other aspects of it working at such an incredible level is something that has to make this the best horror movie ever made.
Yeah, it is everyone doing the best they can and achieving that goal and even surpassing it, because it's a time capsule in its time. And when you look at nowadays with Stranger Things and Fear Street, where still very good and very competent films, but they are taking a lot from, yes, they might be saying Goonies and whatever they have, as in the zeitgeist at the time, but these films like Manhunter have offered so much to like the re-emergence of this sort of neon,
all that neon and everything. There's no neon in the Goonies.
no, but like it's there though. It is prominent in what Mann was trying to do in this film, and I really love that quote that you had at the beginning, which I never heard, where it was like his intention of the film. And I'm like, take a bow, you have nailed that, and it is exactly what I got out of the film.
Absolutely. And you know what they say, if you stare too long into the abyss stares back, and I think that really sums up what this movie is trying to say.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for coming on, Umar, and I highly encourage people to check out Lad: The Homecoming, which I am very excited to have backed on Kickstarter. And so I have not only all 3 issues coming to me, but also a fun print, which I'm very excited about. And
yes.
Hell yeah. So tell people where they can check out the back issues and where they can look forward to reading the new one.
The upcoming Kickstarters will be on, Kickstarter. Just follow me on social media. You'll find it on there. But back issues...
What's that social media?
Just my name, Umar Ditta.
There you go.
It's luckily there's not a lot of Umar Dittas out there, so I would snag that up right away. But you can find digital or the print copies. If I'm being honest, especially with the delivery and all that stuff nowadays, digital will be less hands-on for me. I'm just being honest here, but you do get issues 1 and 2 digitally and on Gumroad. If you just type in my name in Gumroad, you'll find my store there where there's Lad, Untethered, and also this new sort of mini anthology of my sort of short stories that I've put on there. But for physical is on Big Cartel. Again, just find my name on Big Cartel. I think it's, or you can go Big Cartel, umarditta.bigcartel.com, and you can get the physical copies on there. And yeah, that's about it. I do have some more comics coming in. In fact, I think I mentioned I got my first sort of actual not self-created comic. Actually, someone said, hey, let's give this guy a chance. I can't give more details than that, but that looks interesting, so hopefully that should work out soon.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Very excited about all your upcoming work, and people should definitely check it out.
Thank you.
As far as my plugs, you can find me on Twitter at LittleHorrorPHL. You can check out the Patreon, where we have all kinds of bonus episodes, like We talked about EC Comics, speaking of comics, and all the Crypt Keeper and all that jazz. We just had an episode with Alana Johnston, a.k.a. The Knife, who came back to talk about Freaky Friday 2003, starring Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, the best horror movie ever made.
Yes, yes.
Also, I know I mentioned it a while ago, and it kind of just faded away, but I've been doing that Psych rewatch podcast. That's a lot of fun, called We Heard About Pluto. So if you're like, I wonder what George thinks about modern procedural sitcoms instead of horror movies, guess what? I'll still connect it to horror a lot. So you should check that out. And also, we're doing an X-Files watch-along on the Patreon as well, which that also relates very heavily to this. So a lot of things that are connected to Manhunter because it's so good.
You are a workhorse, and also I can't believe you've done over 100 episodes on this podcast. I tip my English hat to you.
Technically, we have not actually done 100. I accidentally deleted a bunch of episodes and then had to re-upload them. So we're like,
technicality, no damn boo over it. Doesn't matter. It's fine.
I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it.
I had to chuck a Comedy Bang Bang reference in there. Just
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Scotty Ox.
I know my audience. I know my audience.
Thanks again for coming on, Umar, and have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye.